Okay, we are going to do an interview with Miss Marian Faulk from Springhill Medical Center. And let's just go ahead and get this started. All right, what is your position at Springhill Medical Center?
Director of Marketing.
Okay. And what are some of your day-to-day duties and responsibilities?
What we do is we get the word out about Springhill Medical Center in various ways, trying to drive patient volume. And we do that through public relations efforts, advertising efforts, marketing strategies that make sense for a hospital to target patients. Some of our target markets include the physicians, obviously, because they're the largest drivers of patients to Springhill Medical Center. So we've got to keep them happy, and we've got to stay in communication with them and do what we can to promote them. We do some branding of the hospital as far as public relations and advertising efforts. So you may see us on billboards, you may see news stories placed in the media, and other efforts similar to that. So physicians are a big target market, then direct to the public with our branding. And we have some other strategies, new movers we target, and people new to the area. And just staying out in front of the companies, the largest employers in Mobile as well, to try to keep their workforce healthy. So that's another big strategy of ours for marketing.
Okay. All right. What is the specific role that you play in sending or responding to messages for this organization?
So I coordinate almost all of the external messages, and we do a lot of internal communication as well with things like the electronic newsletter, the Grapevine employee newsletter. We do all of the brochures and flyers for 85 or so departments that we support. And getting back to external communication, I'm also the public information officer for the hospital, so in a crisis, that's who they would come to, in addition to administration. And we generally try to run all external messaging through administration for approval, and the media starts here when they call. They're directed here, and we try to get them the information that they're looking for. We'll find the right person. If they're asking something about blood, we'll call the lab. Mm-hmm. If they're asking about a patient condition, we call the patient supervisor, the hospital supervisor. And if they're looking for something on a story like a Medicaid cuts or things like that, we will go through administration and get the right person for the right story that they're looking for.
Okay. What is your view of how well Springhill Medical Center works economically as an organization or socially?
I think Springhill Medical Center is in a unique position, being a sole owner, private, for-profit entity. We pay taxes, so we're supporting the community in that way. But we also have some freedom to do what we need to do to be competitive. And we're not real top-heavy, so we're able to make decisions quickly when we need to, or turn the hospital around when we need to, when the regulations change, or when new legislation is rolled out. We're in a really good position to be able to do that with a sole owner. So we support the community with taxes. We are able to keep the nonprofits extremely competitive for the patient benefit. So anything we can do to make the hospital better for the patients, robotic surgery being one thing, we're able to do that pretty quickly with an easy sole owner approval process. So that helps keep us competitive, which helps keep the community, the other hospitals, competitive, because they'll want to stay on par at least with what we're offering.
And we're the only hospital that's privately owned. Correct?
We're the only
Here
hospital with
area.
a sole
owner.
Privately owned.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. What sort of influence or power does Springhill Medical Center have on the community?
What sort of impact?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we pay taxes, so that's a huge impact for the community. We also are able to offer the latest and greatest where other hospitals might not be able to for one reason or the other as quickly as we are in some areas. So that's an advantage for the patients that we serve here in the community. We do a lot of community work as far as supporting the Heart Association in a huge way, and other organizations like March of Dimes, United Way, so on and so forth, American Cancer, all the other organizations that we're able to support. And we do a lot of sponsorships. We support a lot of education programs. We also help educate our staff. So advanced degrees, which ultimately will help and serve the community by making our practitioners better. So does that help?
Yes,
with that
ma'am.
question?
What are your views on the positive aspects social media has on Springhill Medical Center or any business?
Okay, so the positive aspects of social media is being able to get the word out quickly when you need to.
Yeah.
There are ways to use social media proactively to promote your brand and to get get people talking about you. There are ways to use social media to talk about the advancements going on here, to tell our own story when we can't get our mass media to do that. We can do it through social media, so it's great for that. And it's great for keeping people informed with the correct information.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. And in contrast to that, what are your views on the negative aspects of
There's
social
plenty
media?
of negative with social
Yes.
media. Again, sometimes credibility can be a problem when people are talking and posting about you with the wrong information that you have no control over, or they're posting reviews about you that you have no control over, and they could be someone who works for the competition, just posting something mean.
Yeah.
They could be someone who just has an axe to grind out there, just saying mean things that never happened. I mean, so there's a credibility problem, I think, with some of the things that get posted in social media and photos, and trying to protect our patients' privacy.
Yeah.
When people post things they aren't supposed to be posting about other families that are on campus, that can put us in some problem. We have some problems there. And then employees sometimes will be using social media instead of working.
Yes.
You know, sometimes that gets a little out of hand, so you have to get control of that and put policies in place to prevent that. And so those are some negatives I can think of off the top of my head.
Those certainly happen. Well, does social media improve marketing for Springhill Medical Center, and if so, in what way?
That's a tough one. I think that's a yes and no. We have put some things in place to try to control the interaction that people can communicate through our official sites and things like that. We don't want people posting nasty, ugly things when we can't track the source on our own sites and things like that. We answer all the reviews that are out there. We try to monitor all that to make sure that people aren't saying things that aren't true. We do research when we see reviews and try to track down what actually happened and try to get to some sort of resolution with that person. So it can be good in trying to show us where we're weak in the patient's perspective, from the patient's perspective or from a visitor's perspective. But it can be bad because those aren't always true, what they're posting. So as far as promoting the hospital, it does give us another avenue to tell our own story. So I like that aspect of it, and there's several ways to do that. You can do, video, which people love, photos, and you can put information out there about things like robotic surgery or some of the procedures that we're doing here. We're the only site for, like Orbera and things like that. So we have a good avenue to control that. It can be done quickly. We're not dependent on any other person to get that done. So we can turn that around quickly, and we can control the actual information that gets put out there. So all of that is good.
And I think you did, my next question was the negative aspects, but you kind of touched on that.
Yeah, there's plenty of those too.
Yes. or how it hinders
It's
marketing.
a little challenging sometimes.
So tell me about the most negative experience you've had with marketing through social media.
I think probably one of the most negative is a bad review on Google, which Google is the king out there. You know, everybody sees these business reviews. And we had a really bad, really negative Google review that we had to do some research on. And while some of the information seemed like it was legitimate and the way they wrote it, it really could have reflected poorly on us. When we did the research, we found out that almost none of the things they mentioned happened. Either that or it wasn't really the patient, so who knows. So I mean, that was one of the worst situations we've had, was just a horrible horrible review. And we always invite these folks to contact us directly to try to resolve whatever the issue is, and of course they rarely do. But there were some really nasty things posted out there that if we had just left it alone, it could have made us look even worse.
Yeah.
So we're forced to address it, but most of the time we're finding that this information is just incorrect. You know, they may have been upset about something else, but they post things that aren't true often. So
Not being in person.
right, and it's very challenging sometimes because they're using aliases to post, and we have to try to figure out in whatever way we can who this was, who they're talking about, by dates and things like that. I mean, some of the things we look at.
Well, what about the most positive experience you've had?
I think, case in point, we have a new procedure where one of our surgeons is doing, the Orbera, and the vendor that provides that device, that product, is helping us with a digital marketing campaign to get the word out about the procedure, and they have some beautifully produced video that we're able to tap into, so we don't have to pay for that video that's already been produced. So we know that video usually gets more clicks on things like Facebook and some of the other social media outlets. So yeah, right, and it's really cool the way they did it, and we would never have the budget to do that animation and stuff that they have. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right, so that's been positive so far.
Okay.
I mean, we're just kicking that off, but I like the whole idea of it.
And I've had some experience with that procedure, so that's interesting to know. What are your views on media bias as it pertains to Springhill Medical Center? Do you think that there are some bias with reporting as it pertains to hospitals in general? And if so, tell me about an experience.
Yes, I do. Sometimes reporters will come on campus. If their bias comes from wanting to sensationalize stories, to make them more exciting sometimes than they really are. And we had an incident on campus years ago where a lady was in the parking lot going to her car, and she got a little truck came by and snatched her purse, but her purse was wrapped around her, and she got tangled up, and the truck ended up running over her leg in some way. It was really bad. And the media wanted to sensationalize that whole horrific incident. And there are things we just cannot say when someone when there's an investigation going on, or obviously if we have a patient in the hospital and privacy laws are in place to protect the patient's privacy. Only the patient can tell the media certain things about their condition. So, I mean, we have a lot of laws in place where we just can't say much to the media. They're aware of it, but they would rather make the hospital look bad by not talking about certain things. So there's some bias there too, and you know, they'll stand across the street and just pan the hospital campus, and if they don't see something obviously going on there, they'll make assumptions, and there's just no way to defend that. So Yeah, I see some bias, and that's kind of, our hands are tied in
Yeah.
some ways, but our obligation is to the patient in the long run, so we have to
Yes.
abide by that. It's tricky.
I can imagine. What is Springhill Medical Center doing to stay ahead of the competition?
We do a lot. We do a lot. We have, we put our physicians that come here in place, we put things in place to help them bring in new and unique procedures that haven't been done anywhere else. We've been over backwards to help put those things in place that they are asking for to try to make those things possible. Thinking of the OR in particular and the cath lab, we do a lot up there with those guys to keep them, and even in the GI lab a little bit with the spyglass with Dr. Sanders. I mean, there's some things we're helping our physicians be able to do that they have asked to do that they probably couldn't get done as quickly at other hospitals. So we try to have the latest and greatest in the radiology technology as well, and you know, we usually have the fastest MRI, fastest CT scanner, you know, this, that, and the other. So we put all of that in place to help our physicians offer the latest and greatest to the patients. Did that answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what forms, if any, of marketing without the use of the internet or social media is still used at Springhill Medical
Okay, so
Center?
we use mass media to some extent. We use direct mail even on the ER. When we opened our new ER, we did a direct mail campaign with a postcard that had a little magnet on it.
Mhm.
They could put on their refrigerator
Okay.
with the ER phone number and the emergency location of the emergency department here, things like that, a little map. So we use direct mail, we use mass media, we use public relations as far as media relations goes. We'll send out news releases about things that are going on here. Digital, you said non-digital?
Or non-social media?
Okay, so we'll use digital marketing in other ways. We'll do search engine optimization and search engine marketing through things like AdWords, and digital advertising through specific targeted websites for the age groups and the demographics that we're looking for certain services or for just general branding.
Okay.
What else? We do the New Mover program, which is a monthly bulk mail that goes out to new residents in our area. We'll market our services to them. We have like a whole packet we send to them on the hospital, about the hospital. Then we do a marketing program, which is actually a wellness program. It's called Body of Wealth, and it's coordinated through our department, and we work with the 30 or 35 largest employers in the area to offer them a free wellness program. We go out there and we set up health fairs, and we'll have display booths of a lot of the different services that we provide, like diabetes education, nutrition. We'll have physical therapists out there. We'll have the lab out there. We'll have doctors out there who can answer specific questions. We'll have pharmacists out there. So we do a lot through that. They are also, these employers are also offered other opportunities to have experts come on their campus and do presentations on things like cholesterol management, blood pressure management, diabetes management. I mean, just several wellness programs. And then there are other things like walks that we organize through that, and some other activities. So there's a lot going on with just that one strategy that we do.
Also helps the community.
It does.
At the same time.
It does. It keeps the workforce healthy. It gets the information out there that they need, the health information that they need. So all that's good.
Do you ever get any results as far as how much business we get from internet or versus mail that people get?
We do have things in place. We do have action items in place through the various efforts that we do that help us measure the return on investment as far as how many of these folks that we reached are actually coming back to the hospital. We do have some things in place to help us track that, so we know how to best spend the dollars, the limited dollars that we get for marketing, and so we know, what's working best, and what needs to be tweaked a little bit, what might be working better. So we're constantly evaluating. So yes, there's some things in place.
Where do we get
that.
the largest amount of our volume from marketing?
I would say social media.
Social media.
Was definitely the most efficient, and we are able to target exactly the type of patient who's looking for these specific types of services, like mammograms. It pops into my mind because, that's obviously the majority of your patients are female and of a certain age, and so those are the ones you want to target, and it's just so easy to do that through social media, and then it's easy to track who we're actually reaching. So it's a very efficient, affordable way to, mass media is a little tougher to try to measure who exactly came to the hospital based on this ad. It's a little tougher to track that.
Okay. My next question was about, are there different ways of marketing to different groups of people? But we kind of touched on that a little bit, I think.
Absolutely.
So how do you think marketing has changed in the last 10 years?
With social media and the digital platforms, that's been very challenging for marketing people like me, because we still have the same amount of dollars to spend, but now we've got to try to find the best mechanisms that work for us. With those limited dollars, you can't put it all in mass media, but you do have to do a little mass media. So there's a balance there. So that's been the trickiest part to me in the way things have changed. And then you've got to be on your game as far as what works best with social media. Which social media, which ones are best for this target market, which ones are best for this method of delivering your message. Where does video work best? Where does testimonials work better? So on and so forth. And so that's been tricky, and you have to really try to stay on top of your game and constantly evaluate that stuff, and go out there and learn what's new. Always.
Okay.
Come on in. You're on video.
All right, and in what ways have these changes improved or hindered marketing?
As far as social media, I think, again, it's easier to find your target market. It's actually easier to measure your return on investment, and it's easier to control the message. So all of that's been a great improvement. The flip side being that sometimes all the C-suite folks see are the negative reviews out there and things like that, and so that's frustrating to try to educate, or not educate, but try to keep informed the folks in administration who struggle with, well, we hate social media, so you have to kind of tell them what the flip side is
and
help them understand. Right. So sometimes we can control the message, so that's the good, that's the flip side. There's good and bad in all of it. So that's my message.
So what are your views on the future of marketing?
I think we just need to stay up on the trends. We have to stay informed about the trends and how they're changing, because you don't want to just always do X because it's always worked for us. Well, consumers aren't like that. They always want the latest and greatest. They always want to try new things. So we've got to be in there with them. We've got to figure out where they are and what messages they like to receive and where, and try to stay on top of that. So it's constantly evolving, and it's evolving very quickly. So every month I go to a professional development luncheon. I learn something new every single time. And then I go to conferences a couple times a year, always just full of good information, and then reading trade publications. I mean, you've got to stay on your game. You've got to do it, because it changes all the time.
Yes.
And then you have to, educate up. You have to let them know what's going on and how this has changed and how we might want to look into this. And so you've got to be able to have that open communication with the administration, or the folks who make the decisions. So that's all good.
All right. How does Springhill Medical Center's organizational structure change during crisis?
Okay, yeah. So we have an organizational chart for every day-to-day activities at the hospital. We all know our roles. That changes drastically when there's a crisis, and we like to use hurricanes here because we have them a lot. And we all need to know our roles during a crisis. We can't wait till the day a hurricane hits to know where we need to be and what we need to be doing. We all need to have a kit ready, you know, especially someone like me, because I have to go mobile. I have to go over to the hospital. I'm off-site, so I have to have, how am I going to reach so-and-so? Okay, what if, you know, the cell towers are down or not functioning? What if the internet is down? What if there's no battery for this, that, and the other? So you have to think through everything that can go wrong, because it will. Yeah. And you have to know how to reach people. You have to know, you have to anticipate needs and help fill those roles and answer that. My particular function is public information officer, and so I need to be in there in the hospital. I need to know how many patients do we have, how's that changing every hour, because the media is calling. They want to know. They want to know, what are we seeing, what kinds of injuries are we treating, how, you know, things like, how are pregnant moms getting to the hospital during the hurricane? They have, you know, they're going into labor and so on and so forth. What do we do about that? What are we doing to keep the hospital functioning, keep the power on, keep the people fed? So, you know, because you're not getting deliveries, a lot of times you don't have power, so you got to have generators in place. You know, there's a lot of things that you got to be aware of that go on during a hurricane to be able to answer those questions. And then as things change, you've got to be able to be around to know what's going on and be able to answer those questions and get that information out there to the public too. And that's how I see my role. My role is to make sure the public knows what they need to know. And the media, they're asking a lot of questions that maybe, yeah, you got to answer those too, because they want to know this stuff. But you know, we need to make sure we're getting that information out to the public. And we have a website to do that as well. We have an email, an e-newsletter we can use to send that out. A database of people who have signed up to get information from the hospital. We can push that out that way too. And they're calling the hospital about things that we're expected to know, but that maybe we haven't thought about knowing. And I try to anticipate all of that. I mean, we get called about the special needs shelter and you know, things going on in the community, emergency management. So we try to stay in touch with folks out there and do whatever we can to fill a need in the community when these sort of things happen. So that's my role, and that's how I view.
Big responsibility.
Yeah, the organizational chart does change a little bit because everybody takes on roles. Even we have a labor pool even. So if you don't have a specified role and you know you're supposed to be at the hospital that day, you have to get to the hospital and you have to be in the labor pool, and we pull from the labor pool wherever we need help. And so, you know, that's one way the organizational chart changes as well. And so I'm no longer out there doing your standard everyday marketing. I'm filling a need at the hospital and trying to help manage the media and the information that goes out publicly.
Well, let's hope we don't have to do that.
Amen. Amen.
Anytime soon.
All right.
Well, that really concludes my questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, call me if you have anything else.
I will.
If I didn't
Thank
answer
you very
anything
much.
accurately. You're welcome.